Welcome to the 201st episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. Welcome. Well, I don't have anybody here today. My registered dietitian is back in Atlanta. The Veg Fest is over. Back to regular work. I have Vincenzo the cat here with me, so we're just going to give you a little update of what's happened this week and some exciting news and some different things in the literature this week. So we'll hit on some of that. I'm closing in on the Asheville half marathon and whole marathon. That's the week of March 15th. So that's just a little over 2.5 weeks away. I'm coming back from my flu bug. Energy's back for the most part to kind of tire out a little easy. So I've just kind of done a reverse taper. You know, people talk about after one marathon, you know, you taper down from high mileage to 3 or 4 miles a day, 5 miles a day. You do the marathon, and then you kind of work your way back up slowly. So I'm kind of pretending like I did a marathon. I did a marathon on the couch with the flu. And so I'm working my way back up and trying to get rid of that, ready for the Asheville races. And I'm feeling better every day. We'll see how it goes. I'll just be really excited to be able to actually leave the house and go to the marathon as opposed to sit in and being on the sidelines. I'm not one that likes to sit on the sidelines very much. So that's that. I'm doing a little weight training, but not a whole lot because, again, I'm just kind of coming back from being fatigued. So I'm going through the motions, light weights, range of motion, lots of stretching, lots of mobility, and we'll see how all that goes. Backyard garden update. Our mulberry tree is actually making enough mulberries for the birds and us. So we're getting some mulberries to put in our breakfast. So that's great. If you haven't had a mulberry, they're really, really good. To me, they're better than blackberries. And so I'm excited about going down to the yard and pick those. I've also picked 2 papayas from the trees this week. So that's pretty cool. So there are several papayas that are on the tree ready to go. We have lots of our mangoes are blooming for the first time. One bloomed last year. We had like 5 mangoes. So we should have more than 5 mangoes this year if they all stay on the tree. Some of them have fallen off, you know, little abortions going on out there. But hopefully we'll have enough mangoes that we can sample different varieties because we have several different mango varieties out in the backyard. In Florida, there's over 40 different varieties of mangoes. And, you know, right now, if you go to the grocery store, there's some mangoes coming in from probably Mexico, Peru. They're Kent mangoes, and they're a very low fiber mango. They're really good. So, you know, if you can go to your grocery store and get a Kent mango, I would tell you to do that. I'm a little spoiled. I don't like the really high fibrous ones that you have to kind of fight to get off the pit, so to speak, but Kent's are really good. So getting a few mangoes from the grocery store now. Still have some frozen from last year that I make my mango sorbet. And if you haven't had mango sorbet, you can get fresh. You can get frozen mango or buy mangoes and freeze your own. But I put a banana in the Vitamix with a bunch of mango and spin that down, and it's fabulous. So that's the best dessert in the world as far as I'm concerned, is a mango sorbet. As far as the practice goes, this was kind of graduation week. Typically we do desserts in our level 1. We did a black bean brownie bite. Everybody likes that. It always comes out good. We do them with black beans and dates, little maple syrup if you need it, depending on however the dates are, and cacao powder. And those are really good and really tasty, and you're getting your beans in. It's a way to get the kids to eat some beans without them noticing it. In our level 3 class today, we had a potluck. So everybody brought a dish, and it was fabulous. I posted the picture of the potluck on Instagram. I made the beet apple parsley salad, which was good. A lot of people did some bean dishes, some rice dishes with lemon, quinoa dishes. Someone made a chocolate dip out of dates and cacao powder and chia seeds. That was fabulous. Another person did a jackfruit taco dish, which was great. Made corn masa tortillas, you know, without any oil. We had a mushroom marinade. We had mushrooms that were covered with cornmeal and some flaxseed and baked. Those were really good, like a meatball type of deal. So a lot of really good food, stuffed our bellies, a lot of different salads with, there was a potato salad with all kinds of different vegetables, or broccoli salad. So, and a vegetable ratatouille. So lots of food to get our bellies full, and everybody shared the recipes, and that was a really good time. I'm having a little bit of some tightness in my low back, and I went to see a friend of mine that's a chiropractor to do a little bit of getting me stretched out. And on the way out, his receptionist said, "Hey," she said, "you know any teas I can drink for my blood pressure?" It's like, well, hibiscus tea is good for blood pressure, drinking 3 or 4 cups a day. And she says, "Oh, good." She says, "I'm just on 2 medications. That's not too many, right?" And, you get a 5-minute consultation at the door. Obviously, hibiscus tea is not going to fix your blood pressure if you continue to eat salt and, fat. And she wasn't overweight. But again, standard American diet with increasing salt, increasing oils, vasoconstriction. Hibiscus tea can't fight that. I suggested that she eats the greens, and encouraged her. The chiropractor is also plant-based, so hopefully she can get some input from him. I did leave a beet salad there, so maybe she'll get. But she said she didn't like beets, so. But she liked other greens, so perhaps she'll get into those. But there's also a study that just came out in the Journal of American Medical Association this week that looked at exercise in older people in their 60s. 60s is, greater than 50, but still less than 100. So it's just the beginning of being older. And it looked at sedentary behavior, sitting in a chair 8 hours versus taking a 30-minute walk and then sitting in a chair for 6.5 hours versus going for a walk and then every hour or so getting up and doing some activity, walking around for 3 minutes or so. And what they found was a progressive decrease in blood pressure over the course of the day with the more activity that you did. Now you can say that's no big surprise, but again, 30 minutes plus just getting up every hour as far as lowering blood pressure, 5 to 7 millimeters of mercury, that's huge when you look about most medications don't do much more than that. That's why that girl was on 2 medications, because you usually don't get more than 5 or 6 millimeters of reduction in blood pressure medications. So just that simple activity of 30 minutes of walking plus every hour getting up and walking around can actually decrease your blood pressure. And it actually decreased the epinephrine, which is either flight or fight type hormone. So you decrease that hormone, so your arteries type of relax. So if you have that setting on your watch that says move, listen to it. Get up and walk around, do some lunges, do some calisthenics, walk outside, walk back in. Addie got a new dog, and he's a puppy, and he needs exercise. And a lot of people have animals that eat things in their house. And, if you just use that time period to take that dog out for, a little bit of walk, or let the dog walk you for, 5 or 10 minutes, every few hours, then both of you will benefit. And, this is a good time to plug the 4th annual Charlotte County Plant-Based Nutrition Conference. Eric O'Gray is coming. He is the author of the book Walking with Petey, and basically turned his life around by becoming plant-based and starting to walk. And he rescued Petey, who was an overweight middle-aged dog, and they started walking together. And it's not only good for the person, it's good for the dog. And, getting outside has been shown to decrease your, depressive symptoms. So it's all good. The animals need just as much exercise as we do. It's also funny, there's this discussion I run with my German Shepherds, and, how old does a dog need to be before they can go running? And, is running bad for a dog? And it's not unlike humans. People always say, oh, running's going to hurt your knees, running's going to hurt your hips. And so they say that about the dogs. But the reality of it is being overweight is going to hurt a human and a dog's hips and knees. And having decreased muscle tone is going to hurt everybody's knees and hips. So, when you get out and exercise yourself and your dog, everybody, it's a win-win situation. So it's another reason to get up and move and break. You have a better thought process. I come home every day at lunchtime and have lunch, but before I have lunch, I go outside with the dogs and we play a little frisbee or walk around the yard. And it really clears your mind, and you're ready to go back to work, and you feel like you're refreshed, and it's, you break the day up. So if you have the opportunity to go outside and walk around, certainly do it. I was also reading in Runner's World. They had a couple heart stories. One was a 35-year-old woman who was a mother of two and training for a marathon, and she would go out and run, and she would get discomfort in her chest. It goes down her arms, and she thought it was bronchitis. One of the problems with WebMD and going on the internet and typing in your symptoms, if you have to know what symptoms to type in and describe them. When I take a history from a patient that comes in with chest pain or some sort of condition that they want to talk about, sometimes they're trying to make their own diagnosis instead of giving me just the symptoms. And I think that, there is, that's why we go to medical school, is to be able to listen, and your doctor should listen to you and, hear the symptoms and hear what's going on. And in women especially, chest discomfort can present different ways. When people think about chest pain, they often grab the left side of their chest, or they'll say they had a pain in the left side of their chest or their shoulder. And typically that's not the discomfort. Typically there is a heaviness or a fullness, and it's more central. It's more up under your, in the center of your, up under your rib cage, like if you know where your xiphoid process is, which is just at the bottom of your rib cage. So you have this fullness, like people describe indigestion. If you put a fist up at, I guess people would call it their solar plexus. If you put a fist there and you put pressure on that, that's the sensation, or a sensation, this fullness up into your throat, or the feeling that you wish you could just burp. Sometimes people have some jaw achiness, or just this terrible ache that they'll describe it as a toothache, or sometimes it's a neck tightness. Sometimes there's radiation down the left arm or the right arm, or just a heaviness in the arms. But it's not usually sharp. It's not usually left side. It doesn't occur with movement. And, if you're trying to discern whether it's your lungs or your heart, it's usually, if you have a discomfort in your chest that's worse with taking a deep breath in, it could be the lining of the lung or pleurisy. It could be the lining of the heart, but that's not usually coronary artery disease. That's more of an inflammatory condition. If you move and you can reproduce the discomfort just by turning your shoulders, then that's not usually cardiac in nature. If the discomfort starts out when you have to really be exerting yourself to feel it, and then it starts to happen with less and less exertion, then that's a symptom that it might very well be cardiac in etiology. Most chest discomfort is the same each time. It doesn't go from side to side or place to place. You don't have jaw pain one time, chest pressure the next. It's usually the same every time for an individual. Even if that individual's had a bypass or a stent, when the chest pain comes back, because, if you don't change your lifestyle, it will, the symptoms are the same. So when people, paying attention to what those symptoms are is important. You can also have the symptom which you just wish you could have with just burps. So like a severe indigestion can be a symptom as well. So if you go out and exert yourself and all of a sudden you have a terrible indigestion feeling, or you wake up with a terrible indigestion feeling and you really haven't eaten anything wrong, then it can be concerning, especially if you have a cold, clammy sweat. That's a reason to go to the emergency room. Certainly if discomfort persists after you stop exerting yourself more than 5 minutes, you should seek medical attention. If pain awakens you from a sleep, and again, you're short of breath or you're diaphoretic, you should seek medical attention right away, because 30 minutes you can have irreversible heart damage. So it's really good to get something taken care of right away. Sharp jabbing pains most of the time is not cardiac. So that's kind of a little primer on, whether chest discomfort is or isn't your heart. And of course, sometimes people that have diabetes, and sometimes women, they just have an overwhelming sensation of fatigue. They're just so tired that they can't seem to get enough sleep. They wake up tired, and that can be a sign that something is going on. So back to this article in Runner's World, this woman thought she had some sort of asthma. Obviously, when you have asthma, you wheeze, and you can get some shortness of breath, but, the discomfort in the arms and things is obviously, and something that comes on with exertion and stops with rest is most likely coronary artery disease. And lo and behold, she had a stenosis of the front artery, the left anterior descending coronary artery, and had to have a stent, and all is well now, but she's only 35, so she probably had high cholesterol, high blood pressure. It comes back to, you can't outrun a bad diet. If she had cholesterol, obviously 35 is young, but there may be more to the story. But high cholesterol, hypertension, not treated with standard American diet, exerting yourself, putting strain on your heart can cause an issue. So you need to be, aware, and just, again, being in shape is great, but continuing to eat poorly, is going to decrease the protection, of being really good in shape. And a lot of people, she had 2 children, she hadn't been running, and just trying to get back into exercise. It's different. Somebody was already, an elite athlete and training, but, oftentimes people will ramp up to the marathon before they can run a 5K or anything else. They want to do something, and push themselves, and then it's when they get into trouble. There was another man, he's 54 years old, and he ran his 155th marathon, and it was his first marathon after his heart transplant. And he ran a 4-hour and 54-minute marathon, which is not too shabby. His best marathon was 2 hours and 56 before he had a cardiomyopathy and ended up having a heart transplant, and he's only 54 years old. People can get a cardiomyopathy. He did not have blockages in his arteries. He had a weakened heart muscle. Can happen after a virus. Can happen for unknown reasons. Different things can trigger it, but nevertheless, he was able to get a heart transplant and go back to training. So that was, again, nothing really stops the human spirit that is dedicated and really wants to train. I trained in a heart transplant center at University of Pittsburgh, and we would see people with rejection of their transplants, and rejection often presents with the coronary arteries become very small and sclerosed, and cholesterol and plaques can be an issue, accelerated atherosclerosis in transplanted heart arteries. So it's really important for people that get heart transplants or any organ transplants to take good care of those organs, and eating a plant-based diet is going to help that out tremendously. For those of you that heard Gretchen barking just a minute ago, I looked up and I saw the Domino Pizza car going by my window. It's great for a cardiology podcast to see the Domino's pizza truck going by. Glad you barked at him, Gretchen. Keep him off our street. I like to talk about studies and report the literature, and we talk about it every week in our nutrition classes, and certainly I bring it up on the podcast. But, not all nutrition studies, and not all research studies are good. Even back when I was in medical school, everybody wanted to publish a study, and you wanted to get your name on a paper. And the funny part, I was getting ready to leave academic medicine. I had been on faculty at West Virginia University, and I was very upset. There was a lot of things going on at the school that wasn't really good, and I decided to take a job elsewhere, or I was thinking about taking a job elsewhere. But I didn't really want to leave academic medicine because, all the research is done and the latest in the latest news and the breaking, doing new procedures and new medications and new research. And to leave all that to go into private practice is where people, I thought, just were behind the times and didn't know as much. And how could you stay on top of things if you were just out in the community practicing, and you wouldn't be respected? And the reality of that is that a lot of, so my dad asked me, he's like, well, what's the benefit of being, at a university? And I was like, all these great things. And that I told him about, and I said, yeah, and I published these papers, and my name gets to be in print, and he said, what happens with that? And I said, well, people just collect them, and they don't read them, and they throw them in the corner, or they use them to start the fire. And that's really, where a lot of research papers end. Just read again in Nature magazine, 1.6 million papers are added every year to the Web of Science database. And, a lot of them are not good research. People are encouraged to do research papers and get things published and to work your way up the academic ladder and, have your name 6th or 7th on a list. And, you should look at some of the references when you see some of these studies in Time magazine or some of these places. Pull up the study and look to see if some of these, and look at some of these references that, are they real? Do they go anywhere? Were they just of 6 people or 7 people? And it doesn't mean that that's not showing some progress, but a lot of the studies, especially when it involves medications, are very skewed. And a lot of studies can be very skewed because people are just trying desperately to get their names in papers so that they can work their way up an academic ladder. And there's even a article here that talks about, in India, they're paying for papers. And so there's a lot of papers coming out because there's more money in a paper that gets published in an international or U.S. journal than it does, in some of the other journals. And it's led to a lot of frivolous papers being published. So you really, when people cite research for whatever reason, you really have to take it for a grain of salt. And even back when, in the days when I was in practice and prescribing a lot of medications, I never prescribed a new medication the first year it came out because you just never knew how it was going to interact with other medications and whether it was going to work or not. And, I always read the studies myself and, things to look at, the number of people and the, when we talk about the relative risk or the absolute outcomes versus, the relative reduction. So statistics can play a huge role in what papers actually say. And just because something is reported in the New York Times or Time magazine, you don't know where it really came from or how many people or what the quality of the study was. So yeah, you actually have to do your own homework or rely on someone that's really reviewed the paper and can explain and talk about how many people were actually in the study, just not on outcomes suggestive of. And a lot of research that are done on animals, it doesn't necessarily apply to humans. Oftentimes it doesn't. It's a start. There can be suggestions of, but it doesn't necessarily have to be true. And whether or not the populations in. So there's a lot that goes into whether a research paper is true or not. And to change your thinking or change your way of behavior, you really have to be careful before you just kind of jump on the bandwagon. That being said, I'll bring up a few papers that I read. There's, we're looking at the microbiome, and we know that in babies that are born by C-section, that they don't have the development of their microbiome like those of children delivered by normal vaginal delivery. And a lot of institutions are appropriately now swabbing the child so they get the appropriate mycobacterium in their system, as opposed to just the staph that they would be. Staph, is one of the bacteria that's on the skin that they would be exposed to. We also know when children are breastfed, not only do they get the microbes from the breast milk, but the breast milk has chemicals or proteins that actually feed the gut bacteria of newborns to help develop a normal or a healthy microbiome. And so there was a paper this week in Nature magazine that actually looked at whether babies that have breast milk from the breast or from a pump, is it the same thing? And they actually saw that, and again, they studied just 393 baby mother pairs, but they found that the milk from the mothers who pumped had a lower number of microbe it wasn't near as diverse. The microbes, there weren't near as many different kinds of bacteria, and there were some more pathogenic bacteria than the milk from mothers who directly breastfed the babies. And there was also a group of bacteria called bifidobacterium, which is commonly found in human milk and in the digestive tracts of infants, that was less abundant in those who had the babies that had pumped milk versus direct breastfed milk. So that's really interesting. Again, another way that we in our fast society that we're cheating our children by not maybe taking the time we should. Obviously, pumped breast milk is better than formula milk, for sure. And, things happen, and, you have to do what you have to do. But again, relying on that more often than not is probably not as good a thing. So it's just, again, more and more are being identified with, the development of children, development of their microbiome, when it comes to, whether it's C-section, whether they're breastfed, antibiotic use, every time a child gets an infection, if they get, hit with antibiotics, that causes a decrease in their gut bacteria. So, and how that relates to different allergies and development. So certainly if a child is, been exposed to those particular conditions, then attention should be made to, improve their gut bacteria. And certainly, again, focusing on eating a plant-based diet as a child is going to give a lot more microbes, a lot more fiber that feeds good bacteria. Yet another reason to, not be so concerned with a vegan child as opposed to a child raised on, meat and dairy, which is very inflammatory. So, there's a lot that can be done with plant-based nutrition at all stages of life to help kids out. The other study that was reported this week in Nature magazine looked at people's sleeping pattern and how it actually can lead to coronary artery disease. A lot of times people argue, is it cholesterol that causes cardiovascular disease? Is it inflammation that causes cardiovascular disease? And the answer is really yes. But, more and more studies being done on sleep, whether people sleep through the night, whether they wake up intermittently, and, what harm does that have? Of course, there's, sleep deprivation. There's people that wake up because of sleep apnea that actually have a drop in oxygen. So they looked at some of the proteins that were excreted from the hypothalamus in people that slept through the night versus people that had, periods of wakefulness. And they discovered that their expression of a protein called hypocretin, also called orexin, was reduced in sleep-disturbed mice compared with control mice. And low expression of hypocretin has been seen with individuals in humans that have narcolepsy, that makes people fall asleep all the time. And this hypocretin is also associated with the production of it causes the bone marrow to actually produce a colony stimulator factor called CSF1 that promotes the release of white blood cells. And so this lack of hypocretin in people that have sleep disruption stimulates the CSF production and increases the number of white blood cells and actually can promote atherosclerosis. And they demonstrated this obviously in a mouse model. And so it's complex because they looked at whether they got rid of the whether both the hypocretin and the CSF had to be present or not. They notice a decrease in this hypocretin expression and increased white cells even in shortest period of 12 weeks of sleep disruption. And it's thought that perhaps the brain undergoes some structural change in the neurons as well. Nevertheless, there is something to suggest that sleep is important as far as inflammation in the body. There's also a association with body weight. That when the hypocretin levels are low, that the energy is not as expended as much. So when those levels increase, there's more leptin produced, which increases the energy burning. So lack of sleep may also increase weight. There's also a drug out there called servorexant, and it blocks the hypocretin receptors. And it's for the treatment of insomnia, and the question of whether this could actually have cardiovascular side effects, which have never really been looked at because they've never really associated this inflammatory state that comes from the bone marrow from this particular hormone. So again, I think it goes back that, getting adequate sleep is good. A good sleep hygiene is good. Also, eating in a way that decreases your inflammation to begin with is good. So you can imagine if you're eating in a way that, causes more inflammation, perhaps decreases your ability to sleep because of gastroesophageal reflux. All this stuff can build up and accelerate atherosclerosis. So it's not just, what you eat or how, there's a whole big connection between eating, inflammation, sleeping, resting. Bottom line, we all need our rest. And, good sleep hygiene, going to bed, not, decreasing the screen time, not having the TV on, is all good things that, help people sleep and not wake up. Sometimes people have to wake up to use the bathroom through the night. So take the intake of fluids early on can help. The other thing that causes people to have to get up and use the bathroom throughout the night is that they retain fluid. So eating a high-salt diet may cause people to retain fluid during the day, put it in their ankles if they're up. They put fluid in their skin, so when you lay back down, you resorb the fluid. Next thing you know, you have to use the bathroom. So all that can go into helping people to, sleep better and decrease their inflammatory risk. So bottom line, get some exercise during the day, eat right, and get your sleep adjusted as much as you possibly can, and don't burn the candle at both ends, which we've all done, and we live to regret it. March is colon cancer awareness month as far as the health awareness. Certainly eating a plant-based diet will decrease your risk of colorectal carcinomas, places in the world where they get 70 grams of fiber, decrease diverticulosis, diverticulitis, gallbladder disease, colon cancer. Nuts and seeds do not cause diverticulitis. They do not worsen it. That's an old wives' tale. There was one bad study and everybody jumped on the wagon. What does cause worsening colon function is a low-fiber diet, eating meat, which selects for a bacteria that's more of a putrefying bacteria that can, take care of rotting flesh and all the inflammation associated with that. Remember that your immune system is largely in your colon, so eating very inflammatory food is going to cause worsening inflammation. Inflammation can also lead to tumors and abnormal DNA. There was also a study looking at, the more fat people take in, it may alter the ability to handle omega-3s and omega-6s, which can ultimately lead to more inflammation. And that can also be related to colon cancer. So, change in bowel habits should be looked into. Screening with the hemoccult for blood in the stool is a good test. Most colon cancers occur in the descending colon. So a flexible sigmoidoscopy is probably all that needs to be done. Unfortunately, in the United States, complete colonoscopies are oftentimes done, and they're unnecessary, and they come with increased risk. If you're plant-based, then, I think the screening with the hemoccults and the FIT test are adequate. If you're not plant-based, then probably a flexible sigmoidoscopy is after age 50 should be done. If you had a history or a family history of polyps, then it should be looked into. You can get rid of those and things, again, adjusting your diet to a plant-based diet. So it's good to be aware the more fiber you take in. So it's a good month to increase your fiber intake. There's no fiber in animal products. There's only fiber in plant foods. So if you're thinking about eating an oatmeal or a piece of toast for breakfast, then choose the oatmeal. Adding more fruit in your breakfast increases the fiber. Adding a big salad at lunch instead of a piece of bread with some, piece of lettuce on that also increases your fiber. Adding greens to your soups will increase your fiber. Eating some raw vegetables during the day increases your fiber. Having more fruit at dinner time increases your fiber. So, to protect yourself, again, increase the fiber in your diet and get rid of the animal products. Again, I'd like to invite you to the 4th Annual Charlotte County Plant-Based Nutrition Conference. We're going to have Alan Goldhammer from True North Health, as well as Eric O'Gray, Addie Dulaney Meinerich, and myself, a plant-based breakfast and lunch, a cooking demonstration, question and answers, and in general, a very positive day full of support. It's like Dr. Dulaney's big nutrition class for 150 people. So I'd invite you to come. Tickets are going. We do have limited seating because it's a small conference. So get your ticket. You can go to drdulaney.com, DoctorDulaney.com, and get your tickets. There's a link there. And love to see you. If you're coming in out of town, you'd like a private consultation with myself or Addie, we have a couple left. So grab those up. And I'd love to meet you and go over your medical records and give you a plan of action. Again, go to the website, learn more about our practice, because we see a lot of people or talk to a lot of people that aren't in town here in Florida. We have 2 different online programs for people to participate in. And we want to help people take back their health and wellness. I think that we can always tweak our bodies and make ourselves better no matter what age. I see improvement in it, and it's so nice, today with the potluck to see so many healthy people and so many colorful plates of food and people feeling well. To me, that's what healthcare should be about, not waiting to the shoe drops and you have your bypass or your heart transplant. Let's take care of things before. So get exercise, get sleep, eat fiber, eat plants, fruits and vegetables. Go out and get some sunshine, and I'll speak to you next week. So from Vinny and I, we're signing off. Have a good weekend.